Here we go. All right, let me see. So there. All right, Morgan. Morgan has a story for us. There she is. Did I unmute you? Yes? Hold on.
Yes, yes.
All right.
I was getting a cookie.
All right. She's got lunch with a coworker. Hit it.
Okay, let me bring up the right screen. Wait, where'd it go? Oh, wrong window. Okay. So, at my day job, I'm a code monkey, a software engineer, as it were. And for those of you who don't know, that's a very male-dominated industry. So I end up working with a lot of guys. Back in my early days of being a software engineer as a young college hire, I'd been working for a team for about 6 months that went out regularly for lunch in groups of 2 to like 20 of us. We were based right near the mixing bowl, you know, where 95 hits the beltway, but my team switched company divisions to one with a higher salary bracket. And I, along with a few others, were left behind in the half-empty wing of the old building, looking for new projects to take us on. These near-empty halls are where this story really begins. I still had a small follow-on project I was working on for my old team, but the days of big group lunches were over. My days were spent at a computer by myself, listening to the echoing hallways. So when one of the few remaining coworkers asked, did I want to go out for lunch? I was like, sure, but it's got to be something quick, maybe Wendy's. I usually drove when we went out in large groups because the directions really helped me learn the area, and I had a pretty decent sized sedan. But this time, my coworker offered to drive. Feeling lazy, I accepted. But then when we got to the light for Wendy's, he turned right onto 95. Okay, I thought, I guess he decided to grab something else. Maybe the mall food court. That hadn't been an uncommon choice when it was a huge crowd of us. We were chatting away, and the next thing I see is the exit for Vienna. He had switched from 95 to 495 and looped halfway up the Beltway. That's when I started getting a weird feeling about this whole lunch thing. And I realized this was, in fact, the first time I'd ever grabbed lunch with him solo. Just off the highway in Vienna, far from Springfield, he turned into a little shopping center. And he turned to me and asked, do you like Turkish food? At least we were still aiming for food. Definitely, I replied. I love tzatziki. I mean, I wasn't actually sad that we weren't getting Wendy's, but this lunch break was going to take a little while longer. Maybe he just had a hankering for home-cooked food. And who knows, they might be pretty fast with the takeout. So we walk into this restaurant and I look around, and it's clearly a place that expected most of its patrons to sit down, not carry out. There were actually white tablecloths on all the tables without the little plexiglass on top. So we go up to the waitress, and instead of asking for menus, he tells the waitress, 2. Well then, it looks like we're dining in. A far cry and literally miles from my agreement, carry out from Wendy's or something quick. The service wasn't quick, but the food was tasty and the company was mostly normal coworker chit chat, veering a little bit into the, so what do you like to do for the weekends? Then it came time to pay the check. I tried to take the check twice, or at least pay my half, but he insisted on paying, and my eyes went wide. Maybe 3 times would have been the magic number, but I didn't want to push. He was my ride back to the office. After lunch, we hopped back into his car and he drove us straight back to the office with no new side trips. Phew. He walked me back to my cube and I reminded him that I still had a project to work on. And finally, he returned to his office 2 hours after my, sure, let's grab something quick. It took a minute for the whole thing to really sink in. I was sitting there at my desk when I realized, according to the dictionary, kidnapping is a criminal offense consisting of the unlawful taking and carrying away of a person by force or fraud, or the unlawful seizure and detention of a person against his or her will. Thanks to his fraud and my lack of an escape method, I realized that lunch probably counted as a kidnapping. Here's a lesson learned, guys. Don't take women on stealth dates, especially not coworkers. And that was lunch with a coworker. I'm Morgan Hazelwood. You can find me everywhere as Morgan Hazelwood.
I like it. I like it. It was good.
It was an awkward lunch.
It was good.
Sounds like it.
Kidnapping with a coworker. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. All right. We're gonna go to Doc. Doc's gonna read First Timer. First Timer. I like that already. All right. He's gonna invited by Morgan, so this is good. He's gonna read Before Breakfast. All right. I'm gonna mute everybody.
I had my previous mic set up die on me, so I don't have enough time. So,
all right, there you go. You're good.
All right. Let me just diverse my hands of a couple things. All right. This is Before Breakfast by Doc Coleman. Pull! Cold winds bit into me, despite the thick leather coat I wore, as I watched the dark disk rise in a majestic arc over the metal plates of the Argos. I grunted softly as I lifted the shotgun to my shoulder and sighted along the barrel at the dwindling clay pigeon. I let out my breath slowly as my finger tightened on the trigger, feeling the tension in the mechanism. Choosing my moment, I squeezed the trigger gently, the weapon booming and kicking back against my shoulder. I took the shock and continued to watch the clay pigeon as it sailed out of sight over the edge of the ship. Damn, I grumbled. I'm not sure I would have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, my lord. Miss Bang shook her head as she gingerly took the shotgun from my hands. I expected you to hit at least one of the pigeons. You're bloody awful, added Tinker, as she loaded another disc into the apparatus that launched the clay pigeons to its doom 1,000 feet below us. I can't believe you missed the whole dozen. You're a flippin' menace with a gun. She squatted next to a spring-loaded trap mounted to the hull. Part of me wanted to argue with the four-armed engineer, if only to salvage my pride. Unfortunately, the rest of me feared that she was right. Now, Tinker, Miss Bang admonished, the shotgun simply isn't Sir Richard's weapon. I nodded my head in appreciation of Miss Bang's explanation, but Tinker wasn't quite done with me yet. Are you daft, Tanya? I've seen them as never held a gun before pop off 2 or 3 with a shotgun. He missed 12. You don't get much worse than that. She pointed at me with her upper left hand to punctuate her point. But he hasn't hit either of us or the ship, so he isn't exactly a menace. So kind of you, Miss Bang. Perhaps we should call an end to this experiment, I suggested, clinging to the little scraps of my dignity. Instead of answering, Miss Bang gracefully bent and stowed the shotgun in the case at her feet. I looked past her towards the bow of the Argos. Past the gently curving slope of the ship's hull, I could see row after row of clouds, but as yet, no trace of the desert sands we were passing over. While the sands below were burning hot, at this altitude the Argos flew. The winds were still cold and biting. For that matter, the clouds were still few and far between, but at the angle we were seeing them, they appeared to be stacked up upon each other. Of course, from our position at the top of the ship, we couldn't really see down to the desert without moving dangerously close to the edge. But while the lounges and balconies below decks provided a better vantage point to the lands below, they weren't ideal for Miss Bang's firearms experiment. She stood up again, pulling a rifle out of a second case. I think it's time to move to the second stage, my lord. I took the weapon from her with a sigh and loaded cartridges into the ammunition port on the side. Isn't it harder to hit skeet with a rifle? I asked as I pushed rounds into the weapon. I'm not really sure what you're expecting to discover with this experiment, Miss Bang. I would say it was impossible, as I have known a number of marksmen who were capable of it, but I have a suspicion that the normal rules may not apply to you, Sir Richard. You did display an uncanny ability with a pistol back in Prague, despite the fact that you'd never fired one before. These trials are merely to determine your level of skill with firearms and determine if you have a general or a specific talent in their use. Or if it was just a case of beginner's luck. That is one possibility, my lord. Tinker snorted in response to Miss Bang's comment. I hefted the rifle. Then I guess we had best get this over with. Miss Bang nodded approvingly. Tinker, pull. I fared better with the rifle. I managed to clip the pigeon 3 times out of a dozen, which honestly surprised me given how poorly I fared with the shotgun. I had used a rifle before for hunting, but not often. Yet this time it felt different. It felt wrong. The gun was too big, too bulky somehow. It seemed like I was throwing around a cannon. Miss Bang took the rifle back and handed me a holstered pistol. I stripped the holster from the gun and tucked it into one of my pockets. The gun was a .22 caliber revolver, ideal for target shooting. I loaded the gun and pointed it to the deck, away from my companions. You realize that the odds that I'm going to miss every single shot with this thing. A pistol just doesn't have nearly the range of a rifle or a shotgun. It just isn't that accurate over that distance. Yes, my lord, but Cat, will you stop climbing on me? Yes, my lord, but I still believe it is worth trying. Regardless of the outcome, we may still learn something useful from the attempt. I raised the pistol. Very well. Miss Bang gave the command and Tinker let the pigeon fly. The pistol leapt forward, but seemed off balance in my hand. I fired without thinking, without even trying to aim, and saw the skeet change direction slightly. I dropped my weapon to a neutral position. Did I hit it? I'm not sure, my lord, Miss Bang said. Something happened, but it could have been a fault in the skeet. Shall we try again? Tinker launched the next skeet, which flew apart as my pistol leapt out with a satisfying crack. Something still seemed off, but I was beginning to compensate for it. I don't believe it, Tinker whispered. Well done, my lord, Miss Bang called over the wind. Thank you. Something still feels off balance, though, but I think I'm getting the hang of it. Really? Can I make a suggestion? In Prague, you drew your gun and fired without thinking. Everything else you did went from there. Perhaps we need to recreate that situation. Try putting on the holster and drawing from it when Tinker launches the skeet. Tinker, another pigeon, please. I returned the pigeon to the holster and attached it to my belt as Tinker deftly recocked the launcher and loaded a new skeet. Her extra pair of arms made her extremely efficient at the task. I made considerably less progress as the cold wind cut into me as I had to open my coat and jacket to secure the holster to my belt. The temperature had already made my fingers a little stiff and clumsy. After a few minutes of fumbling, I had the holster attached and tied down to my leg, and shook my hands out to try and force the blood back into them. Pull! Cried Miss Bang. Surprised, I reached for the gun as Tinker launched the skeet into the air. I watched the spinning clay disc as my hand snaked under my coat and withdrew the revolver held gently in my fingers. The gun felt light in my grasp. It fairly floated up in front of me as my eyes followed the pigeon. The pistol barked and then dropped as fragments of clay scattered into the air. My hand snaked back up under my coat and stopped as the gun slid firmly back into its holster. For several seconds, the only sound was that of the wind across the body of the Argos. Tinker broke the silence. Bloody hell! Tinker, language! She was unfazed by Miss Bang's rebuke. Did you see that? Even with the bloody coat, the gun practically jumped into his hand. It was like he didn't have any bones. And he hit it. She turned to me. You hit it like it was just sitting there. I know. It just felt right. I shrugged. It would seem that the pistol is very much your weapon, my lord. Tinker scrambled to reload the trap. Do it again! Without waiting, she launched the freshly loaded pigeon. The revolver slid effortlessly out of the holster and flicked upward with another report. The target exploded into fragments. Yes! Tinker crowed. You do seem to have a natural talent with handguns, Sir Richard. Do you think you might be up to trying something a little more difficult? I could certainly try. What did you have in mind? Do you think you could try to hit the pigeon more than once? Her head tilted to one side as she waited for my answer. I don't see how that's possible. Won't the pigeon shatter from the first hit? How can I hit it again? She pulled the edges of her fur coat tighter around her. I was thinking about your first shot. If you didn't miss, but instead clipped the edge of the clay pigeon, that would make it change direction without shattering. Part of it would break off naturally, but there ought to be a larger portion that you could aim at for a second shot. That sounds like an impossible shot, I said. But I seem to be using that word a lot, and we already seem to be in that territory, so I guess I might as well try. Tinker reset the trap as I reloaded the revolver, pocketing the spent brass and picking out the loaded cartridge. Fortunately, she waited for me before launching the skeet again. I opened my coat and pushed the right side of the fleece-lined leather back to clear the holster. Very well. Pull. The pigeon leapt from the trap and my arm lashed out. The gun barked and the skeet jumped in the air, shooting off in a new direction. My arm twitched again with another retort, and the skeet split again. A third retort sounded, but the pigeon had already broken apart, and the shot missed. Tinker let out a prolonged howl, her arms raised in the air above her head. Miss Bang stood with a shocked look on her face. Couldn't believe it myself. Well, Miss Bang said at last, I believe we have achieved our quota of impossible things for the morning. Shall we go down for the breakfast? Not yet, Miss Bang, I said, holding out a hand. Tinker, please load the trap. I want to try that again. She loaded the trap with a fresh clay pigeon, then looked at me with a grin. Pull. The final disc spun out over the metal plates of the Argos. The world seemed to come to a crawl. I could see the faint wobble as the uneven pigeon sped away from me. The wind quieted and seemed to slow, as if it had been removed to a distance. I never even felt my arm move. Suddenly, the pistol was in front of me. Bang! The pigeon leapt up and to the left. Bang! It jumped up again, this time speeding to the right. Bang! The clay pigeon shattered, minute particles spreading out in all directions, and then being whisked away as the wind returned and the world resumed its normal pace. I restored the pistol to its holster and buttoned up my coat. The two of them were mute with disbelief as they stared where moments ago the skeet had danced across the sky. Ladies, I believe you said something about breakfast. And that's it.
Nicely done.
Okay.
Good, I liked it, yeah.
Great first-person narrative. It's hard to
Thank you.
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no.
Yeah.
Spy.
All right, I'm gonna go, all right, Anant, you're up next. Anant has 2 pieces for us. Here we go. Where's Anant?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks.
There you are, all right, good.
Okay, let me read my first poem. It's called Civilizations. You breathe, thanks to the phytoplanktons, expounds the wise man. April is the warmest month, sighs another, but it doesn't matter. Shadows linger along the silent white wall in an eternal stupor. A slow humming wind reels along the earth on this dry, drawn-out afternoon. Parched by a lonely sun, a wind chime makes a feeble effort, twinkles the dust-laden remnants of leaves. A stillness is stirred, fading to the gray. Civilizations lie cold and buried under. That was Civilizations. And now the second poem is called Seriatim. You, me, and this eternal chaos surrounding us. Horses galloping, Seriatim until they bleed. Humanity, but a narrative of cringed tales stuffed in the alleys of civilization, of longing, losing, love, and war. I breathe one more time, trying to fill as much air as I can till my lungs explode in a perfect harmony, a weird unison, with the chaos around me, dust to dust, ashes to ashes. That was Seriatim. Thank you. I only had these 2 today.
I like that, yes.
Good.
Yes, I really like the second one.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it kind of became relevant due to things happening around us.
All right, we're going to move to David Holloway. He's going to do Criminal Masterminds.
Okay. Criminal Masterminds. I have 2 rules. Rule number 1, never work with crazy. Rule number 2, never work with stupid. In spite of my rules, I agreed to work with my old friend Teddy. Everyone called him Teddy the Eel. Not because he looked like one, although he was tall and slim, but because he acted like one. Just when he seemed well and truly caught, he'd wiggle free somehow. That might have been the strongest recommendation for working with him, because on any given day he could be either out of control, an idiot, or both if he was on a roll. This time he seemed relatively sane, and his scheme even seemed workable and low risk. It involved a remote history museum, taxidermy, inside information, aphrodisiacs, and a samurai sword. I sat with a shot of Jack Daniels and a water chaser on my usual stool in the last gas bar in Ketchikan, Alaska. Glenn Campbell sang about the Wichita lineman in the background, and I stared at the long rows of dusty bottles behind the bar, trying to forget my mindless work, my jerk boss, and that I only had $20 to last until Friday. I didn't want to be bothered. I didn't want anybody sitting next to me. I just wanted to marinate in my misery. Teddy dragged a stool up next to me. The legs squealing on the concrete floor sent a chill up my spine. He wore a sheepskin coat that had turned a strange mustard yellow color, and his cowboy boots with the metal toes, the ones he called the roach killers. He needed a shave, but his eyes were clear, bright, and sober. So, Joel, want to do a museum? That's Teddy. No hello, no long time no see, no how's things, no I'm sorry about the last time, just straight to business, monkey business. No, not after last time, I answered. That was a pure fluke, man. You can't blame me for that. They didn't have a guard dog when I checked the place out. Besides, you was always good with animals. Good with animals? What are you talking about? Never had a dog in my life. Your bird, man. How can you forget the bird? That bird was a riot. I can still hear it screeching. Who's a dirty bird? Who's the son of a bitch? The The bird was Carol's. She wasn't real happy with what you taught it to say. No sense of humor. You're better off without her. He was right on both counts, but it irritated me that a moron like Teddy could see what I couldn't. To be fair, lust blinds most men. What about the time before that? That pawn shop was a sweet score. Everything went perfect until we got paid. I swear, when Larry handed me the envelope, it had $2,000 in it. Yeah, but when we got home, it turned into a stack of singles, and we never saw Larry again. I turned back to my drink. I'd had enough of rehashing the past. Teddy ordered a draft and drained half of it in a swallow. I knew he wasn't through recruiting me. Teddy believed in the water dripping on the rock method. Drip, drip, drip. After a few thousand drips, you got a little indentation in the rock. After a few million, a hole. Even the stoniest denials had a way of yielding to Teddy's relentless persistence. I'll just find somebody else. See, I thought of you because this was kind of going to make up for the last time. It's perfect, easy money. It could even be the start of a great system. The water started to drip. Let me just tell you a little about it. No harm listening, right? I didn't answer. I didn't need to answer. He would talk until he'd vomited the entire master plan out onto the bar in front of me. We broke into the museum the next night at midnight. It didn't take advanced burglary skills. Ted pried open a basement window, slithered in, and came around to let me in the front door. No sign of a guard or any alarm system. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Maybe everything would go right this time. Bright moonlight shone through the large windows in the museum. We could find our way around easily, without flashlights. The Ketchikan Museum of History received a large endowment from General Gordon Schlumpf. There was a string attached. They had to display as taxidermy trophies. Like most small-town history museums, the Ketchikan always needed money, so they agreed. That's why I was in the empty museum at 1 a.m, staring at a mounted rhino head with a brass plaque reading, "This record white rhinoceros, nicknamed Brutus, was collected by General Schlumpf in 1959 before the species was endangered." Collected? You find it washed up on the beach or blasted to hell from the back of a jeep while it grazed nearsightedly in the distance. Brutus's front horn was as long as my arm, and the second horn had to be a foot long. Brutus looked to have 10 pounds of horn at the very least. This was a great score. Teddy finally came through. Even though the wall had a buffalo head and a roaring lion, Brutus definitely dominated. They'd mounted not just the head and neck, but the shoulders as well. He charged right out of the wall into the room. His tiny, piggy glass eyes had that weird characteristic of following you around the room. When I stood under him, I felt a gust of hot air on my shoulder and looked up to see that I was right under the rhino's nostrils. I leaned my head against the wall and peered behind the mount. A series of hooks held it up, but it wasn't nailed to the wall. Man, this job kept getting easier and easier. I stood on a chair, wrapped my arms around his wrinkled snout, and yanked while lifting. The damn thing didn't budge. I heaved as hard as I could, and nothing happened. It was just that damn heavy. He must have gone a good 400 pounds. We planned on carrying this thing out to the pickup and throwing a tarp over it and taking it home. We'd have plenty of time to work on removing the horns later in my garage. No way we were moving this thing down 2 flights of stairs. We needed to cut those horns off. We climbed off the chair and started out to the truck. Had to be some kind of toolbox there. Surely Teddy brought something to help with this. Where the hell was Teddy? He said he'd stand watch. He came into the living room swinging a long, bright samurai sword, shouting, "Hi-ya! Prepare to die, you round-eyed devil! Look at this sword! How awesome is this? This is a Japanese katana sword. It can slice a piece of paper dropped on the blade. I'm definitely taking this with me." I took a few steps back. "We have a problem, Ted. This guy weighs a ton. This isn't one of those fiberglass casts. This was made back in the day with a heavy wooden frame and sawdust stuffing. We can't get it off the wall and downstairs by ourselves. Did you bring a saw?" "No, no saw, so it's a good thing I found this." He swung the sword around his head in a helicopter motion. I stepped further back. "I don't know, Ted. A saw would probably work better. That horn is pretty tough." "Didn't you hear me? I just said these swords are razor sharp." He swung it like an axe into Brutus's head, and it bounced off, leaving a barely visible divot. "Ted, that isn't going to work." No, that was just practice. Let me get a running start. I can do this." He backed up across the room and dashed towards the rhino, jumping at the last minute and bringing the sword down with his full weight right at the base of the horn. It dug in deep, 3 or 4 inches. Maybe this would work. I watched him yank on the sword. He yanked again. It was stuck. He lifted his feet off the floor and swung on the handle of the sword like a kid on a rope. It still didn't come free. "Come on, man, don't just sit there. We can do this. One more good chop and we can break it off." He looked over his shoulder at me and nodded his head. Okay, give me a minute. I stepped up next to him and gripped the sword handle with him. On three. 1, 2, 3, Ted shouted, and we both yanked as hard as we could on the sword. I felt it moved. It was working. We were going to get that rhino horn and sell it to Teddy's contact for thousands of dollars. I'd pay off my gambling debts and my bar tab. The sword wiggled but didn't come free. We've almost got it. Come on, one more try. Let's really give it a yank this time, Teddy said. I rolled my shoulders, stepped up, grabbed the sword handle, and we both pulled again as hard as we could. I felt it move towards us. I thought we were home free. That split second of elation lasted only until I realized the sword wasn't the only thing moving. The whole damn rhino was charging out of the wall at us. I scrambled to get out from under him before we fell. Teddy fell to the floor, and I tripped over his legs. The huge rhino tottered in slow motion, looming over us. I swear the damn thing's ears were twitching. It rocked back towards the wall. Oh, it'd be okay. Then, with a loud groan, the hooks pulled free from the wall. The huge, wrinkled beast slammed down on us. I heard a deep bellowing sound. Was that Teddy? Felt a crushing weight, and then nothing. I woke to light streaming through the window. Teddy sprawled on the floor next to me, out cold. Both of us pinned down by Brutus, sword still implanted in his horn. I must have been concussed because he seemed to wink at me. I pushed as hard as I could and managed to roll him off us. The museum curator found us then, sprawled under Brutus's head. I guess we're the first and last people to be hospitalized with rhino injuries in Ketchikan, Alaska. We both had concussions. Teddy broke his clavicle. Once we've recovered, we're going to jail. Teddy the eel isn't wiggling free this time. I just hope I don't have to share a cell with him. That's it.
All right, nice. All
That was
right,
good.
nice.
Assault with an armed rhino.
I love the opening lines too. They're really good.
Thanks.
All right, Eloise? Eloise?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, she has 2 for us. So let me mute us all again, and I go down here. All right, go for it.
Okay. Since you start now, I'm can't hear, but is it okay to start now? Yes. Okay. The first poem that I have is called, both of them are very short. The first one is called Searching for My Lost Star. Star of hope that shines in my heart. Where could you be? How did we grow apart? Shining star, my bright light. Wish I held very tight every day and night. Hoping to follow the light of success. The star that helped me pray each day. Now you have gone away. Please don't stay. Keep me from going astray. Searching, searching for my lost star. Wherever you are, I hope you are not very far. Searching, searching for my lost star. And the second one is called, everyone can hear me? Yes?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. The next one is called Mom Was Right. If I made you wear knee pads to prevent you from bruising, if I tiptoed in your room to keep you snoozing, if I locked your hands between my knees to hold you in one spot, if I didn't let you run into the street to keep you in one place, if I sheltered you in the shade, if I protected you from the outside raid, if I taught you to watch for strangers, if I guarded you from the danger, if I shared the words of protection, safety, if I put fear in your heart for doing my part, if I hampered your life and caused you to be, if I bear the guilt and the blame, if I use my intuition and insight to build fright, if Mom was right, I'm not ashamed. If I made you a strong and a cautious man, and that's it.
All right.
That's the. Thank you.
Great.
All right.
I like it.
All right. June Forte is going to read Lessons Unlearned. Lessons Unlearned.
Story.
A story.
There you go. Whoops. There you go, Mary Jo said as she pulled the zipper of Katie's multicolored parka to the top of its track. Toasty warm all the way to school. She handed Katie her mittens. Mrs. Costello said I can be an angel in the Christmas play, just like you were in first grade, Mom. You and Daddy just love Mrs. Costello too, don't you? We do, we certainly do, Mary said, tying today's favorite scarf around Katie's neck and pulled its edge up over her daughter's nose. Katie pulled the edge of the scarf away from her mouth. She's the best teacher in the school, in the world even. That she is, sweetie. Now hurry or you'll miss the bus. Mary Jo twirled Katie around and with a loving push sent her in the direction of the kitchen door. Hand on the doorknob, Katie looked back. She gave a muffled, "Bye, Mom," closed the door and danced into the swirling snow. From the window over the sink, Mary Jo could see Katie at the bus stop, deep in animated conversation, her breath turning to vapor. She was hopping from one foot to the other, her backpack bobbing, her hands moving as if she were directing a choir. The semicircle of students seemed eager to hear whatever Miss Chatterbox was sharing. Mary Jo lingered at the sink and washed the few breakfast dishes they had used until the bus had come and gone. It was just Katie and her this week. Ron wasn't due home until Friday night. While she missed Ron, she loved having Katie all to herself for a while. Later that morning, she sat at the table sipping coffee from Ron's mug. Katie had picked it out at Walmart and presented it with great fanfare to him on Father's Day. Mary Jo traced her index finger over the word Daddy, printed diagonally across the heart on the mug. It brought to mind a different snowfall years ago and a much different Daddy. Despite the warmth of the coffee, she shivered. "Mary Jo, you piece of shit, get in here now," her daddy hollered through the hole in the storm door where the window should have been. His voice was thick with drink, his bare belly pushed out from under a much too short t-shirt. He opened the door with such force it smashed into the side of the trailer. He staggered one foot after the other out onto the slippery metal platform where his legs bridged over Mary Jo as she cowered in her hiding place beneath the stairs. Wet snow fell on his gut and melted into trickles of water that dripped through the grating onto her upturned face. She blinked and held her breath. He raised the bottle and drained the beer into his mouth. "Mary Jo, damn you, get in here," he yelled, edging further out to where the stairs led to the yard. She watched as he lost his footing. His right hand, he landed on his back, still gripping the neck of the broken bottle in his right hand. His left reached for the railing, then stopped short. In the silence that followed, his eyes met Mary Jo's through the grate. "No, Daddy, please." He tossed the remains of the bottle into the yard and rolled over on his stomach. "You little..." Thrusting his arm under the stairs, he rooted his fingers into her hair and yanked her out. He tossed her through the trailer door as easily as if she were the morning newspaper. "I'll learn you to mind me." "Don't learn me," she sobbed. "I'm sorry, Daddy. Please, please don't," she cried, trying to merge her body with the wall she had rolled against. "I'll show you what for." Spittle foamed at the corner of his mouth as he dug under his stomach for the leather belt. He released the buckle and pulled the strap free, wrapping it twice around his palm. The buckle dangled toward the floor, its brass catching the light from the lamp on the table. As if on cue, Mary Jo stopped crying. She scrunched up her face and curled up into the smallest of balls. "Learn this, you lazy." He held nothing back. He hit her hard. "And this." The belt tore through the thinness of her shirt. "This'll learn you. Good for nothing trash, just like your mama. This," he spat. The belt sliced her leg. "Will." The buckle jerked a chunk of flesh from her arm that shielded her head. "Learn." He gritted his teeth. The final blow laid her flat. "You." He finished with a kick to her limp body. She didn't know how long she had been there, lying on the cold linoleum. It didn't much matter. By the time she struggled to her feet, his mood had changed. He was slumped into the sofa, one leg draped over the side. "Go on like a big girl, Mary Jo, and clean up the bathroom like I told you to." With a wave of the bottle, he dismissed her and guzzled a mouthful of beer before turning back to the television. Days later, in one of his rages, he locked her out of the trailer in the freezing rain. The lady from the trailer court office called social services. They came and took her away. She never saw her daddy again, and she never asked why. It was enough to be warm and to eat and not to be beaten. The Nolans took her home for the first week in December. They were her ticket to a normal life. A loving couple, they embraced her as a daughter, and she thrived. Although she didn't know it at the time, she was twice blessed when they took her to school and left her in the capable hands of Katie's favorite teacher, Mrs. Costello. Mom and Pop had done their best to prepare her for school. They didn't understand why she was so frightened. You love going to school, Mary Jo. You'll make lots of friends there, they agreed. On her first day at school, the Nolans and Mary Jo arrived early. Mrs. Costello met them at the door to her classroom. Go ahead home, Mrs. Costello said, assuring the Nolans as she shooed them down the hall. Mary Jo and I will be just fine. Mrs. Costello steered her into the empty classroom. Here's where you'll sit, she said, showing her to a desk in the front of the room. Mary Jo sat down and looked around the room. There was a Christmas tree with ornaments and lights in the corner by the window. Red and green paper chains edged the chalkboard, and sets of angel wings filled the box next to Mrs. Costello's desk. We're getting ready for the Christmas play, and we're short an angel. I think you would make a wonderful angel, don't you? Mary Jo shrugged. Mrs. Costello walked to the chalkboard and picked up the wooden pointer. We haven't much time before the play. I'll help you learn your lines, and then there are some songs to learn as well, she said, pointing at Mary Jo, who looked up in terror at Mrs. Costello. Please don't learn me. I'll be good, she whimpered. Please, please don't learn me. The end.
Oh. Wow.
That was amazing.
What an ending. Oh.
Thank you. I told you, John, that I thought Alice would cry at that one.
Yeah, that was a good one. That ending, I never saw the ending coming. I love it.
Thank you.
All right, Lucy Koons is going to have, is it a story, Lucy?
No, it's just a poem, and it's a work in progress. I'm not even sure if it's a poem, but you know, I have to follow that.
All right.
That's amazing.
All right, here we go. Hold on.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Lucy, go for it.
How long until we heal? If we had a time machine, we could travel back to the founding fathers and seek their wisdom as to how to heal our nation. For, like the lightning-scarred oak, we cannot grow until our sap, our inner spirit, has circulated and healed the wound that gapes and weeps today. How long until we see green shoots of life emerge once more, stretching leaves of truth and justice rooted in the Constitution, nutrient-rich from our country's foundation of liberty and independence? How long until we heed the words of Thomas Jefferson that, quote, the time to guard against corruption and tyranny is before they shall have gotten hold of us, end quote. How long until we heal?
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great, Lucy.
Yep. All right.
Definitely very relevant right now, too.
I was thinking the same
It is,
thing.
yeah. I know, yeah.
That is so relevant. All right, Katherine Gotthardt has recall. Recall. Hold on. Here we go.
Oh, am I muted?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
You're good.
All right.
A little quiet.
Recall. Recall waves by like a tired baby, confusion puckering, the right words already asleep, unintelligible taking over. No one seems to know why. Maybe it's the surgeries. Maybe it's the age. Maybe it's the strict stride of burdensome time, the hobble of gray matter trying to keep up, child reverting to crawling, attempting to cruise only to fall on its bottom. Or maybe it's just how babies are, crying when something leaves, the favored blanket that fell behind the couch. If you can't see it, is it there? If you can't speak it, was it ever? Better to be prepared. Assume it's gone and mourn. If you're lucky, someone will help you retrieve it.
Nice. Yeah. Oops. So there we go.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the recall, I'm thinking that sort of ties in with June's. a little bit there. All right, I think that the Lopers, are you doing something together or are you individual?
Can you put us on unmute?
Right.
Good.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, you guys are not muted.
Okay. So
Are you just doing one together or both? It's different.
I was going to well, actually, we have two things for you. Just the quick story is that we're learning to telework together. The quick funny is that today, earlier, this is a lesson for everyone. I had a work teleconference going on, but I forgot to tell Olivia that this was happening. So there was a sudden ruckus in the background, and it turns out she was throwing the ball for the dog. Explained to my work buddies what was going on. And she just came from her university. She's home now teleworking, right?
Yeah.
All is going well. So I did pre-record today out in the backyard an old baseball story, John, that I can play.
All right. All right, hold on. I'm going to mute everybody, and then I'm going to put you back on. Okay, and then all right. You're up.
If you can see the screen here.
Oh.
This is from earlier today.
What's it called?
Gone Fishing.
Gone? Oh, I love this one.
It's an oldie but a goodie, John.
Yep.
How do we make it go, Olivia?
Everybody, and welcome to another edition of Open Mic Night. Anyone remember when players had nicknames in baseball like Catfish Hunter, Charlie Hustle, Hammer and Hank, and the Mick? Well, here's a baseball story from 1981 called Gone Fishing. In 1981, we were 16 years old playing baseball in Atlanta, Georgia, where you could carve the heat and humidity with a butter knife. Playing through a 50-game regular season, the goal was to win the state and Southeast regional tournaments to reach the coveted Mickey Mantle World Series in Memphis, Tennessee. By June, balls were flying out of the park, and we were gaining momentum. Several players were destined for college ball, while others like me were just enjoying the moment. We often include picnic suppers beneath the stars after the double headers each weekend night. Of note was our star catcher, Jeff Souls, who ran like a deer and had a violent swing. Over the course of 10 years of playing youth baseball, there were only a handful of colossal homers that I remember, and one of his came courtesy on July the 4th, where he launched one that battled the stars. My good friend Milton Hill was our pitcher that summer, and he was really good. He could also throw batting practice left-handed. One night we were sitting on the hill beyond the field after the game, having a bite to eat, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, Hilton, what'd you do last night? What you been up to?" "Well, I went fishing last night, Jimbo." I said, "Well, what'd you catch?" Biting into a drumstick, he took a sip of tea and he said, "I caught a big bass." I said, "Well, what did you use for bait?" "Night crawlers." For whatever reason, I changed the subject and to a more serious topic. I said, "Hey, Milt, what are you going to do with your life one day?" He said, "Why, Jim, I'm going to play in the major leagues." Well, I kind of chuckled at that because I thought to myself, well, you know, the last time Milton and I played, I was able to get a hit. And Milton read my thoughts and he says, "Well, Jim, you didn't hit it very far. Plus, I'm working on a new pitch called the splitter." Well, I said, "Okay, Milton, good luck with that. I hope you reach the major leagues." We went on home that night and regathered and regrouped and played on through the tournament, winning the district, state, and Southeast regionals, all the way through to the Mickey Mantle World Series. Here we come, Memphis. We made it there, and Milton and I were roommates. And it turns out that Mickey Mantle himself was at the tournament. When we found out, we grabbed a baseball and ran downstairs to get his autograph. It was one of the most thrilling moments of the summer to meet Mickey Mantle. And even after decades, after his playing days were over, his arms and legs looked like gunmetal construction. He was a very strong man. Did you know that the term tape measure shot is named because of him? He hit more balls out of stadiums than anybody. Well, we went on to play the tournament, and no, we didn't win. Milton pitched very well, but it just didn't work out. The boys from Cincinnati, Ohio were very good. We dispersed that summer and went on about our merry ways, not really following each other until about 10 years later when I was watching the replay of the Atlanta Braves. And sure enough, there was Milton Hill pitching. Sure to his word, he went on and was drafted in 1987 and played 4 seasons in the major leagues with the Atlanta Braves and Cincinnati Reds.
Oh, love it.
Right.
One of my favorites.
Super.
I love that story. I loved it.
I miss baseball
loved it
already.
the first time I heard it, and I loved it again there. All right, Olivia. Olivia is going to do something for us?
I don't have anything.
All right, you don't have anything. That's okay.
I'm just a supporter.
That's good. That's all I want to know. That's good. That's good. Good job. All right, so we have one left. Nick Hale joins us. So, Nick, hold on for a minute.
Okay.
All right, you're up. What do you
Whoa. I can talk and everyone else can't. I'm going to talk a lot.
got? Right. Like,
no,
you don't anyway. I'm like
Well, thank you, first of all, anyone who sent us an audio for our show earlier. If you haven't caught that, the link is in the building group. Definitely join us. I'm only going to read one. I'm going to read 2 poems. I'm stalling because I now have the luxury of picking anything that's on my computer, and that's a lot of stuff.
right. I mean, if you wrote as much as you talk, oh my gosh.
You know, I should just get one of those speech-to-text programs and just leave it on all the time.
No, they're not that accurate. I did an author spotlight interview this week, and I sent out the interview questions really late, and she sent me the answers in voice to text. It was a struggle.
That's painful.
Kind of speech to decipher.
Yes. All right, what do you got?
All right, this is Honk if parts fall off. This old bus can slow down anytime it wants to. It's still got one good mirror, can still hit 60 with a head start. This old bus seats 7 or 10 uncomfortably. Its powerhouse engine can move up to 5. This old bus has a paint job of time and duct tape windshields, the back ones for style. Odometer stuck at 251K for the past 2 years. This old bus refuses to see its last mile. Tenacious, cantankerous, it sheds its fender like a senile snake, waiting too long to expire. I have some typos in that's going to bother me. And then I want to read from the book, but I had a copy. There it is. By the way, earlier John was telling me how bad my video is. I was sort of briefly searched for webcams, and like everybody sold out.
It's much better now.
Thank you. Well, I turned off the Northern Lights. I like the Northern Lights, but here's the book that I'm reading from. In case you've heard of it before. Here we go. 11th. Married 10 years, finally arrived. The house, the kids, big job in the city. Up first, dress fast, beat the school bus rush. On a rail, meetings all day, sway to travel rhythm. Write speeches in head, play scenes of success. Roll through Jamaica, panic sets in, gropes the empty space where the disc had been. No presentation, no meeting, no scenes of success. Sigh of frustration, go back. Can make it. To the car, upstream traffic, key in the door, warm embrace, hot tears. Thank God you're safe. On TV, the world changes, lives collapse, like parallel relationships, like looming dread of loss, like crumpled paper in a storm of smoke. Stay home today, love. Please, stay home.
I like it. What was the name of that one again?
11th.
11.
Yeah, it's sort of inspired by a lot of things, a lot of people's stories from 9/11, instances of them not making it to work on time.
Oh, yeah, I'm missing it. Yeah, I'm missing.
Yeah, someone who I grew up in New York, and somebody down the street from me, actually, that happened to them. I think he left his wallet at home or something, and to come back from the train station and saved his life.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's from the Spilled Ink anthology. In case that wasn't on the nose.
It came out this
good-looking book.
Yes.
When did you unbox them?
Yesterday, no, yeah, 2 days ago I got them and I opened them up, and so this is the official reveal. In case anybody was wondering.
Yay.
You just stuck your head in the box and just kept smelling that fresh paper.
Yeah.
I copy, so I can do that. By the way, don't worry.
All right, I think everybody has read. So we had 14 people. Our first attempt at a virtual spelled ink. I thought it went pretty well. We had some glitches, of course, but not bad for a trial run. So I want to tell you I appreciate you all, and I'm glad you did it.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for doing this.
This was awesome.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Applauding
It
you.
worked. It worked.
Did you just give yourself a hand?
No, that's me clapping. That's.
Oh, okay. I was like, what? All right.
I do.
Olivia just gave the thumbs up. Yes. All right. All right, guys. You have a great night. I will see you again, and I'll put this up on the Facebook page or the website. So you guys take care and have a great night, guys. We'll see you later.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
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 Bye.